Open email to the future. Do you remember us? Before I wrote you letters like this in cursive, and you told me I was not your type. Before, when your word had vows, and we had promise, and should have kept both. When we were still stories. Like the one Reverend Vivian still tells about the preachers and their protests, the time we turned that jail cell into a low-power FM, turned us into a one-hit wonder, and those ministers sang us over and over again, even after they were told to shut up, otra vez. Even after they were told they'd lose their mattresses, otra vez. Even after they were mattressless, they sang us again. Do you remember when we spelled I love you with 10 songs, a cassette, a piece of tape, and a Sharpie? Wrote possible wedding songs on it, scratched that, and wrote I Like You a Lot, Volume 1. And he gave it to her. And she gave one to her. And he gave one to him, and they all had the same 10 songs on it. Back when we thought the digital revolution meant 5-finger instead of fist. Back when music gigs meant something different. Back when we couldn't fit a library of songs in our pocket, but we could in our heart. Back when we actually had to remember phone numbers and stop and ask for directions instead of bitching at Google Maps and still stopping and asking for directions. Back when we had to admit that we were lost, that we didn't know it all. You remember when it was the satanic static in the wax that charmed daddy into drunk dancing instead of damage. When we used to cozy up to the snap, crackle, and pop of the radio just to keep warm. When the walls between family members started wearing moving pictures to give the illusion of spending time together. Remember when knowing what buttons not to push prevented distance and silence. Now, it just prevents silence. When weeknight meant gather around the table for TV dinner with TV parents, and grace went something like this: at least we're not hungry and orphaned. Thank God for the Huxtables in both of Mom's jobs. When Neil Armstrong landed on the boob. When the Challenger moonwalked and moonwalked and moonwalked on instant replay. When space stations started beaming stardust to our rooftops to remind us that we are radiant. When gamma rays only meant one thing, and it was not catching cancer from your cell phone. Just like Lou Ferrigno, forever worried about how big when we should have been worried about how green. Remember when Super Bowl commercials didn't suck? When one bully was enough, but her smartphone is more socially awkward than her, so she keeps a gang in her pocket that pummels her where it won't leave bruises until it mega hurts. This email will self-destruct if the colonizers keep trying to plantation the internet. The airwaves are no place for a slave ship. The people think they are free when they are the cash crop. Remember when we said that we would railroad this superhighway under the ground before we let them take us? Pandora, old Negro spiritual station to pirate information with Dr. King, broomsticking Morse code underneath the beat until it was his turn to speak. Remember that we are the First Amendment, the only industry protected by law, lifeblood of the republic, protecting democracy since long before Ben Franklin went postmaster general. How could you forget our endangered languages, native tongue severed, newspaper noosed? Since the telephone is extinct, I wrote you this by hand, worth more to you now as a collector's item, quaint as a stamp, before postage cost an arm and a laptop. You can't forget. The names of dead homies haunt the address book on your phone, their Facebook page a shrine. Relive Newtown in pictures on the screen and call it therapy. So you don't have to relive flashes in your mind and call it PTSD. I wish I was still a piece of paper, not this immortal, this God corporations are trying to bottle and make a wish. Then at least I could be burned. And people would tether together around me again, hands held. The light I'd produce would be warm, not blue, but temporary. And they'd read each other's face, for real, for once, forever. And then they'd sing. Thank you.